The greatest struggle is, why is it that more people in manufacturing aren't out there telling and sharing their story?
Hi, welcome back to the Manufacturing Come Up. I'm your host, Malachi Greb. Here at the Manufacturing Come Up, we talk about a ton of different things, but it's really revolved around the industry and your career within the industry, right? There's a ton of different ways to navigate your career, and every industry kind of has its own way to navigate its career, and especially like through engineering and through manufacturing as a whole. There's so many minute details that can really help you throughout your career and just help you kind of make shifts, and also just overall people's career advice that people are giving. And some of these people are CEOs of big executive companies. Some are, solopreneurs. There's a ton of different individuals on this podcast who are here today, like Gail. Gail's running Gail now, and she's doing some really cool things. She came from um, the news space, right? Or should I say news? What's the right word for it? A journalist, right? She was a journalist, and she's kind of taken her career and shifted it into PR and into the manufacturing space. So, welcome to the show, Gail.
Hey, there we are. Don't you love live? Live is always so fun because you just never know what's going to happen.
How's it going, Gail?
It is going great. It's been a busy time since we both saw each other at Automate over in Detroit, in detail. So I'm glad we met in person, and now here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you come from a very interesting career background, even though it wasn't necessarily a manufacturing career background.
So my background that led me to manufacturing, I've always believed that, curiosity is important and connecting with others is important. And my love of just stories, right? Hearing people's stories goes back to why I really got into journalism. I've always loved interviewing people and finding out more about who they are and why they do what they do. So then from journalism, I actually left there and briefly ran a bed and breakfast, which was kind of a detour. But I often say that's where I got my master's or my PhD in marketing and public relations, is running a bed and breakfast on an island. Then after that, I veered off and I did fundraising. I was a fundraiser for a culture and recreation complex, and then ended up working at an advertising promotion manager in insurance and technology company. And then when they sold their company, I decided to go out on my own. And it was through connections. I was introduced to a president of a mold making company. And well, we just started having these discussions. And next thing, I was helping them out with a few smaller jobs. And then they asked me to help them with a trade show. And that's really a really big area of specialty for me, too, is being able to help tell and share a story both before, during, and after a trade show. So that was how I got into mold making. Was through a connection and door open and a great conversation.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how like the career just navigates to so many different paths and takes you on so many different journeys. Yeah, I think there's definitely the career path where you do one single thing and you stick to that throughout your entire career, and you gain some really strong strengths in that. But then there's also like the expert in their career where like they've taken all these different roads and like so many like weird things that add up. Like, hey, you said run to bed and breakfast. Like there's so many like skill sets that you would grab from that you would never anticipate that you would be able to carry on into the future of your career. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, and the other thing is, we're all different and we all bring different things to the table. And I think that's what's the most important, and what I really encourage when I'm working with clients and when I'm even talking about curiosity is that, it's important that we look at the bigger picture sometimes, and that we don't think that we all have to march to the same tune. And this can sometimes happen in a lot of different fields, or the so-called silos, is that, if you have an operations person, they think they're right. You have the salesperson, they think they're right. You have the owner, he or she thinks they're right. And then you have the marketing person, well, we are right. But no, seriously. The idea though that I think what I try to do because of my background in using transferable skills is I always try to encourage to listen to all of those different groups because they all bring something to the table. And I really have learned that because of all the different careers I've had. I've stumbled along the way, and that's how we learn. We have to make mistakes, but what's fascinating to me coming into manufacturing and why clients often like what I bring in is because I have the marketing, the journalism background, the public relations, and I have done my research into things like mold making and molding. And so I really have learned to understand that world. And then it's about being able to help them tell and share the story. I don't I don't have to know everything. And when I was a reporter, I used to say, I don't have to know everything. I just have to know who to go to get the information. So when I'm doing a story or putting a trade show together or helping put a news release, as long as I know who to go to and get the quotes and then help them shape what they want to say.
Right. Right. Yeah, I think that uh, that's one thing that's definitely missing from marketing. I feel like there's definitely some people that are good at marketing when it comes to like storytelling, um, but I feel like at least when I look at PR, the PR side of things, one I look at it a little bit more individualized. It's the individual versus the company. Uh, but then even then, there's like a lot of marketing where there's not like really a I'll say public relations, an image that's really being portrayed, right? Like what's our story? How do we want to be defined? Like there's not a lot of that that's going on. It's like really it's a position that I kind of look at, for us as a company. Like we have a few mottos and a few slogans that we kind of go by, and hopefully those kind of stick in the market. Like freeing humans one more robot at a time, like that's one of them. But uh, as far as like really having like that PR and that brand image, like our marketing still is not there yet. We're still a smaller team and we're still working towards that, and getting the people in place to have more of that PR and that public type of um, what do you call it, public view and and thought on who we are as a company. But there's just a major I feel like there's a major gap in the PR and the marketing side of things.
Well, there is, although I want to say you're far ahead of many. I mean, you're doing this podcast or show, you're wearing a branded shirt, you're showed up at a trade show. So you are far ahead of so many. Some of the people I'm working with, I'm just trying to get them sometimes to get on LinkedIn. And I often now say, if you post once a month, I suggest to start, just do some, but do it consistently. And this has been the greatest struggle is why is it that more people in manufacturing aren't out there telling and sharing their story? Some of it I think comes from a bit of fear, a bit of uncertainty, and sometimes I have heard this that, and I know this has happened, where someone will post something or do something in manufacturing on a social media platform, and someone then teases them about it and says something, or they laugh about it. And without fail, I always say, was it a customer? No. Was it a future customer? No. Was it a supplier? No. Oh, was it friend or family? Yes. Okay. Then why do you care? Like, I mean, I have been teased about Gail now since the beginning, but I tell you, when I go to events now, people introduce me as Gail now. Like, I actually have my name up here today. Sometimes I just have Gail now because most people, that's how they know me. But um, you know, it is stepping out into that spotlight. But here's the thing, I see people do it at trade shows. They'll go in, even they'll spend all this time on cold calls and they'll do email after email. And yet LinkedIn and having a presence, even like showing up on a podcast show, it is the best way to get people to come in and be attracted to you as opposed to you pushing out. So, if you're posting and engaging with other people, it really makes a big difference. And there is so many stories out there that can, and testimonials of how it works. And, we we know some people in common that we saw at the trade show, right? You saw all that gathering together. I'm part of the Manufacturing Champions group, which, how did I get to be part of that group? Because I showed up on LinkedIn and because I was engaging and connecting with people. And um, it's a lot easier than people think, but you have to start.
Yeah, and it definitely takes a lot of consistency. And to
Mhm.
go back on like the thing you mentioned before with like it can be hard sometimes, like you can get people can try to like ridicule you. And I think one thing is like people like are somewhat threatened. Um, and so they just they like to kind of poke a stick. And like say for instance for myself, I personally experienced a lot of pushback. One, because like I don't have like the best like grammar. I don't have the best grammar, you could say, and or spelling, and I also don't care that much either. So like whenever I'm posting on LinkedIn, if there's like misspellings, a lot of times I don't check for misspellings. I just type the thing out and I send it. You know what I mean? It's a 2-3 minute post, if that. And and especially in the beginning, and LinkedIn has changed a little bit, it's relaxed a little bit, but
Mhm.
especially in the beginning, like there'd be pushback. I'm like, don't make LinkedIn posts if you're not gonna spell your words right, or if you're not gonna use proper grammar, or whatever, and there'd be people even DMing me trying to say things like that. And I'm like, okay, cool. If you don't like it, don't read it. And you just kind of got to push back against it. And I think people after some time will like realize that you're there to stay, and you're not gonna just like shut down and go away.
I have a saying, I believe I've worked in, a lot of different industries. I've worked with people that, say the right things all the time. But here's what's most important. It's what you do, not what you say. And I have learned this from many bosses. I've been involved. I've been in the union movement. I've been in a manager, I've had my own business, traveled in a lot of different circles. And believe me, at the end of the day, I'll take the person who does the right thing and is genuine. And you can have perfect grammar and be not a very good person too. So uh, and like I said, I've listened to some of your shows. I listen, and I think you're doing a stellar job. I mean, it's because it takes a lot of strength to step out when you if those things aren't your strengths, right? Like to whether it's grammar or whatever. But I haven't like it's not something that stood out to me or that I went, ooh, like it. So I think most people do exactly what you're doing. They second guess. What you did differently though was you kept moving forward and you pushed on. A lot of people don't do that. They feel, and that old nasty word, we hear it all the time, imposter syndrome, but it is a thing. People start to second guess. And the other thing that happens, I know this happens in the world of mold making, it happens in automation, it happens in manufacturing, it happens in just about every industry. People think, well, I'm doing this, and even in marketing, well, other people do this too, but no one does it like you. It's like your thumbprint. So when I do I don't really have any competition that I'm truly worried about. I embrace people, even in the circle that I work with in manufacturing, because um, I'm very niche in what I do. I'm very targeted, and no one else can be Gail now. It's just me. And I bring that personality. And here's the other thing that I often say, I may not be your cup of tea, but I could be your shot of tequila.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I think it's very dangerous to worry too much about like risk, or like things like competition. Like you definitely got to do your due diligence, but like like say for instance, we on this podcast here we've had multiple competitor guests on our show. and
Yeah.
and as a company, does that make sense to us? No, no, it doesn't really. But also, I don't care. We're not worried about it. Like, you know one, there's just enough work going around in the world that it's competition is really only a thing once you're one of the big dogs. Whenever you're in the top three or something like that, then you might have to worry about somebody small coming up and taking some market share, or something like that. But if you're kind of just in your own lane and doing your own thing, like, you really have nothing to worry about. Just strive to do your best, and things will work
Yeah.
out.
And Jake Hall, who posts a lot, right, on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
and I've got to know him, and he talks about, collaboration over competition. And we really have more to learn from one another. And if you get into that, if you get stuck in that place where you think, I'm going to keep everything for myself and I'm not going to share anything. I mean, it's not very healthy. And at some point, you're going to need some help with something. That's happened to me now. I've had people on my show too that are, somewhat competitive, but I'm also working with someone now. And we had a great connection. We did, I was on the trade show floor doing some video interviews and capturing some B-roll, and then handed over to him, and he put together some great videos, much better, like in terms of editing, because that's not my strength. But one of the things I know I'm really good at is I can go up to someone and, say, okay, got to do this interview about this, and I can get them from, instead of speaking for 5 minutes that we have to edit, I can get it down to, okay, I need you to say this in 30 seconds or a minute. And people just need a little help with that. And because of my background in journalism, that's where I'm able to help them to condense what they need to say in a succinct way. And because that's where people struggle, right? When you stick a microphone sometimes in someone's face, they will often, I would say sometimes they'll tell you how the watch was built as opposed to, I just need to know what time it is. So I'm good at getting the person, just tell me what time it is.
Right. Yeah. 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 Yeah, no, and another thing is too, like just getting in front of a camera, like there can be like a major like mental shift. Like for me, it's like I feel like me and you can like talk behind camera like pretty naturally and everything like that. And then as soon as like the live happens, or whether it's live or not, just like turn the camera on and hit the record button. Even though we can edit, like it's still like just immediately like now I still experience like just the nervousness and like you know. I guess nervousness. What's the other word that I'm thinking of? Kind of like a feeling of just being like introverted in a sense.
Most that's very common, and people are shocked. Like, I do keynote talks too, and I get sometimes before a talk, like, I can feel nauseous. I can feel like I start usually about a week before. I think I should change my whole speech. I got to start from scratch. It's so bad. And now I've been through something called heroic public speaking, and the other thing that I do whenever I'm preparing for a speech is, it's about an hour of rehearsal for every minute of a speech. So if I'm giving a 10-minute speech, that's 10 hours of rehearsal. And people think that's crazy, but it by the time I do rehearse, go over, but it it does make a difference to rehearse for it, but also it's completely natural to, before a show like this or before you give a talk, to feel nervous. That's human nature. And I often say, if you're not feeling that, you're probably not going to have the right energy. I still, before a show, I mean, I love, like, I'm the extrovert, right? So I love doing shows like this. I love, speaking to groups, but I still get, nervous and second thoughts. So, yeah, it's natural and it's healthy.
One thing that I do find like through the nervousness is like it will bring like thoughts and just language, to your mind that maybe you wouldn't have thought about like that, like just like I don't want to go like completely religious with it, but maybe it's like words like from God, or like just words that come from like a place that's not even from your own mind, because you're in this like state of just like not having an answer for something, and it kind of just comes to you.
I also, when I'm helping people prepare for shows or speeches, that's another thing I've helped people with, is that, um, you know, sometimes it is good to be prepared for, whatever questions, but it's okay to say I don't know, or let oh, I don't have that answer right at hand, but I can drop some more information in the comments after. And I think sometimes we think we have to have the answer at the right moment, we have to be perfect every moment, and we don't. I mean, it's much more natural flow when you can just talk. And if you forget something or you miss speak in some way, right? I mean, that's natural. If something's too perfect, I don't know. I always find it's like those 5-star, when someone gets only 5-star reviews. I'm like,
Yeah, what's going on there? Yeah.
got to be something going on there, right? But um, yeah, it's the other thing I suggest before talks to people is that to write down if you have, like when I'm doing in the past, I had to do, say, radio interviews for a company I was working for. So I'd always have my three key points. So I'd make sure, okay, make sure I get these points out during the interview. And then you never run out of anything to say. Although I never run out of anything.
Yeah,
Anybody that knows me.
yeah. So like whenever you're looking for those like 3 points, are you looking for like any like particular topics, or is it like like these are these three topics we want to touch on, and then like through that, there's going to be like 5, 10 questions, or
Mhm. Well, if say if I'm doing though an interview, someone's interviewing about an event, so there may be three things. So I want to make sure I'm talking about where the event's happening, the time of it, and the logistics, or there's maybe a focus of the event I want to talk about. So I would have those points just written down, because sometimes you get in the middle of it and you're like, oh no, I know I'm supposed to say something else, right? Sometimes even for a show. Now, sometimes here's this was just for my inner. This is my show notes. So I just that was for an earlier show I did, and it's just I write down keywords so that if during the interview I lose track of something, I can look down. And go, oh yeah, I've got to ask about that. So yeah, it's and we all have our different ways of doing things. Some people don't use notes. Some people, like me, I still like handwritten for if, as much as I use technology of everything. Sometimes I like to write out things.
what's your experience on as far as like individuals who are like really prepared before like doing speeches and whatnot versus like those who kind of just go off the cuff.
Well, it depends who you are, right? So if you're a very well-known person and you're going to get paid to be brought in and they're going to just they don't care too much, you can probably do it maybe off the cuff. If you're being brought in as a subject expert or to bring in a motivational speech, usually there's a lot of preparation. And from speeches that I've attended a lot. I've helped book people. I always know the people that have done that 1 hour for every minute of speech. And there's a few people in my circle. Ron Tite, I met him through networking. He was kind of the reason I actually got into the whole heroic public speaking world. And I just want to say, when I attended that course, it was more than just public speaking. It was life changing for me. And it was how I really tapped into the whole idea of curiosity, and where my title, Chief Curiosity Officer, came from, is that other people started saying, you're the most curious person, you're this, that. And I didn't see it in myself so much, but it was very helpful. So there are keynote speakers that I've heard, and now to watch them, you think they just walked up there and they're talking off the cuff. You would think that so the best speakers, it looks like they've done no planning. They just, because it seems to flow naturally, they're speaking, and it's usually all very carefully planned. And they've rehearsed it so much that um, it sounds just like they're up there. Yeah, natural.
And part of my questioning on that is because like I'm definitely more of like a run and gun off the cuff type of individual, and so it's like I really struggle, and at some point in time you will have like more of a team behind me that's doing more of like my preparation of things, like really like forcing me to like, hey, you need to like study this, especially for like certain types of like events and whatnot. um, I'm very lucky to like come from like the engineering background and project management, and so like there's a lot of things that I have a lot of experience
Mhm.
in, and just spent my day to day doing it. So there's things that I can communicate on very easily without needing any notes, right? If we want to talk about something about robots or something about like AMR technologies, or maybe robotic welding or something like that, like those are all things that I can, just communicate on very easily without taking much notes. However, if there's something that requires like more of a deliverable, right? Like you're saying, like a subject matter expert, where they're probably expecting maybe some bulletins of some things, or just um, that those take a lot more, discipline. Discipline's the biggest thing that I look at is discipline.
We all have that issue. And I think it depends what type of speaking opportunity as well. So if you're doing, a breakout session, that's one thing. If you're doing though a keynote talk and you're there and you're like and some of these people like the Ron Tite, some of these other people I've mentioned, I mean, they can be making anywhere to 30 to 75,000 for a keynote talk, right? I would say it really depends. Like I did a keynote talk for women in aerospace, and I spent a lot of time on that speech. And I was talking because the theme was beyond all limits. So I talked about my 3 steps: sign up, suit up, and show up, and tied it into their theme. Now I came in and there was a bit of a theatrical introduction. And it was interesting because I had it all planned, and then I started second guessing myself and going, "Oh my God, this is going to look silly. People are going to," and it turns out quite the opposite. People loved it. They're still talking about that because I did this whole, came up in a lab coat. It was, and so, sometimes we take those risks, right? And it was a calculated risk, right? I mean, it was, and it did tie into my talk. But again, it depends, if I'm going, sometimes I'm asked, like I'm going to be moderating a panel. It's upcoming on networking, and it's going to be a networking panel about networking. So it's through our local university. So they have 2 people from the university community. I'm from the broader community. And I'm excited about that because I love that more people are realizing the power of networking. And I'm going to be talking about networking in person and online. There's a big missed opportunity. And that's why kudos to the people like the Jake Halls and the Chris Lucas and the Megan Zievas, all of these people that are realizing like there's so much opportunity to, tell and share stories, even what you're doing as well. I mean, by there's so many people hungry for this information, and there's so few people putting out content. So as soon as you do one thing, you're ahead of the masses. I can't tell you how many times I've bumped into people and I go, these companies have the best stories, they're doing phenomenal things, and nope, not posting anything about it.
Yeah, I think that especially for the manufacturing sector, it's like just a very dry sector for like just content. There's like hardly anything out there. There's like very little on YouTube, like anywhere really. Like there's just like very little content, and it's almost easy to consume all the content that's on the market because there's just not enough of it, you know?
And people say, "Oh, it's boring," and I'm like, listen. I'm not even in directly in that. Like, I'm not a mold maker. I'm not directly in robotics doing it. But okay, here's a great story that I shared and I've been talking about is at Automate, right? When they had that robot and it was, you went up and picked out your beer and we had fun. We did. I mean, there is a great way. Now they were promoting their company, but what a great way to get people up there. You're in line waiting for your beer. You're looking at their brand. And so there's one example. And there was also, how, and a lot of people think of automation as just being robotics, but it's like so much more. Even for myself, I learned a lot by attending Automate, and because of my background, and I can see things that people in the industry don't see. And you probably see this as, you can see a strength of someone else that they don't see in themselves. And that is why there is so much opportunity, and why when I talk about curiosity because curiosity is the foundation of innovation, and innovation is the foundation of so much in manufacturing and automation. I mean, um, quoting Jake again, but I mean, he had a great post today about sliced bread. He always has these cool videos and the history of it, and he always has some trivia. And I mean, the greatest thing since sliced bread that all came about because of automation, right? And now that term is used to reference something new, something innovative, and it started with a story.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think is the relation between an online presence now and like more traditional PR?
Well, again, it may depend on the industry and what you're trying to do, but I would say in most cases, I think a blend is almost very necessary. Now, there is cases where I'd say a very high, say premium brand that's maybe just they're going after very targeted people and they may not do social. They may do a personalized invitation, those like and I'm talking high end events. Otherwise, you know, it's not one thing or the other. It's usually a mix. So if you're going to go to a trade show, you need to do video, you need to post on LinkedIn, because if not, you're spending all this money for your booth and you're getting everybody walking by your booth for that 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, and then that's it. So why wouldn't you use the opportunity to promote that you're going to be there, post while you're there, and then afterwards continue to talk about your experiences and who you met? It just seems to me like such a missed opportunity, leaving money on the table, however you want to describe it, to not use both from a PR perspective. So, yeah, I'm a big believer in both. Some people think because I speak a lot about social media and I'm a big social media user, that that's where I put all my energy. But no, I go to in person, I go to trade shows, I go to networking events. I still get out and talk to people in real life. So,
Yeah, that's like one thing that's very like fascinating to me, and part of the reason why I brought that question up is definitely I think myself and like a lot of other people, especially younger people coming into the industry, they've grown up with social, right? And so I look at some individuals and they're, let's say they're famous for their industry, right? But they're not doing anything on social, right? They have speaking engagements, they're doing all these things, right? And maybe you'd say they have like a high level of PR. Um, but to somebody like myself and this younger generation, it's like how are they famous and they're not on social media? You know?
well, and a lot of times, I've heard this that people, when they go to hire someone, for like, oh, we got to hire young people because they know about social media. And I'm like, well, they may know, but there's a difference between, using social media for personal use versus how to use it for business and how to, a lot of times what I see people, and I just notice all the time, like they don't know how to tag, they don't know how to put, connect with people on certain platforms. And, you have to be careful you don't over tag and over connect too. There's a kind of a fine line, because if the people that always tag people, it's like, unless they're interacting with you, it can be a little much, right? So that's a big part of it, even though, like, I remember when I first went on Twitter and had no idea. I mean, that was my first big entry into social media, was with Twitter. And um, found it's been a great way to connect with people. And I like how Twitter and LinkedIn work. And Twitter's controversial right now to a certain extent, but not if you know how to curate your feed and follow the right people. And, it's a lot of times people complain about negativity as they are connecting and commenting negatively with other people. And I always said, well, as in life, if you're going to get engaged with people and argue with them all the time, the argument never ends, right? You just keep fighting. And I use my scroll button a lot on Twitter, but I also have met amazing people, like, that have been pretty much, I'd say, life changing for me in terms of the cool people I met because of Twitter. Yeah, it's really good for there's a lot of media, politicians, thought leaders. Now, not all of that necessarily can be good, but there are some people that are very thoughtful, and I know the people to follow because they curate content for me. So they take it, translate it, and I know I can trust them that they're not going to post something that's just inflammatory and they haven't done their research. So, and I like to think that's what I try to do with my Curious Minds show is when I'm bringing people on, it's to help people see a different perspective. So, I had Jim Vinovsky on recently talking about, manufacturing from a perspective of, it's not only sort of one narrative when it comes to manufacturing. We have to maybe look at a broader picture when we're looking at anything, from whether it's talking about climate change or EV vehicles. There's more to the story than what we only hear sometimes especially in mainstream media. And we have to ask more questions.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, one thing that for myself, like on the PR side of things, it's like how do you go about say for instance being like a comical person, right? So like I'll just give you like the example, right? We'll just um basically use myself as an example. Okay.
Yeah, let's do that.
So let's say I'm a very comical person. I have a very unserious side of me where like nothing, nothing serious. And then I have like a completely serious side of me where it's like, uh, I just don't play about that. You know what I mean? Like, so, and the thing is like, they're so very, very separate from one another. Right. So I guess this is like maybe like two different scenarios, but so there's like that, and like how do you manage that in a public relation, or should you just choose one side or the other? And then there's also the other another thing, which is I think is completely separate, but is like the automation expert versus maybe business expert.
Well, I would think what I know, my limited experience meeting you is that I think it's good to do a little bit of a blend of those because that's who you are, right? So I would say is when you I always ask people if you were to walk in and talk to someone or when you're at a trade show, if you're meeting people, which person is it? Only serious person? Does you bring in humor? And sometimes you may do with certain people more than others. What I found works for me. Now my personality kind of blends in a few things because I mean I post a mix of things on some of my social media platforms, but for me my TikTok is my fun, like that's my if I was going to go into acting and theater, go check out my like TikTok, right? It's amazing how many people follow me there, watch me there, and I'm shocked at how many completely shocked at how many people are watching on TikTok. So for all this talk of oh, it's only young people on TikTok, nope, and that it's only crazy people, nope. Like there's so many people use it to scroll through and watch things. So you know, eh, this is how I do my job when I'm working with clients too, is or with a company. How do I show the diversity of that company's personality? And the same thing with individuals. How do you want to be known? And some people feel like they have to be serious to be taken, seriously. Uh, yeah, if you are generally a serious person, but if you like to sometimes have fun, I think people may want to see that side because they're going to see you more as that real person. What you don't want to do is appear on social media one way and in real life as another. So if you can find that blend, and this is where people say sometimes someone will post something on LinkedIn and say, this isn't Facebook. And I'm like, people need to sometimes dial down that judgment too, because I like reading some motivational. I like reading someone's personal journey because that helps me understand that person. Because we're not one dimensional. I'm only going to talk about marketing and manufacturing. That's not who I am, right? So, and most people that work with me know, like I talk about cycling, so that comes up as a conversation topic, right? About cycling and why I cycle, and so yeah. So I guess that's the longer answer to how you could present yourself in a and show some of that humor once in a while. I think people would like it.
Yeah. Also, too, like one thing that I personally do is I segregate like LinkedIn and Facebook a little bit. So like I'll keep like LinkedIn more automation, more business, more serious, like those type of things. Whereas like I let Facebook be a little bit more like behind the scenes. Like if you kind of want to see what I have going on in my life, like as a CEO of a company or whatever, a lot of times there's some things on that side that's just more relaxed. There's not energy that's put into like, you know, how is this going to be partaken, right? It's just like more the raw. This is the raw side of things, right? Um, so I think definitely platform wise is a good way to like segregate and be different versions of yourself, yet still be yourself.
I think you nailed it there. I think that's exactly the right way to do it in terms of, a Facebook, LinkedIn. I mean, my Twitter and what I like for me about Twitter is that it's a little bit of everything about me, and I throw in, there's a little bit gets touches upon some political topics, but then I'll talk about cycling. I do work in the area of mental health as well, so there'll be posts about that. So yeah, I think you have to understand the platform and you have to understand your audience, and then what is, like with anything, what is your goal, right? Are you doing it, um, for what reason, and what is your expectation? So, like my TikTok is just for fun. It is, and I even say that's really my kind of enjoyment. Sometimes I'll just goof around and do a lip sync, and uh, it's fun, right? And it is not part of an overall part of my media plan. Now, here's the other thing: because I work with companies and individuals, I need to know how every platform works. So I'm on everything, right? And a lot of it's testing. So often that's why I say, "Oh, my TikTok, I got to go test out." But it has been good for doing some editing sometimes of some videos. I've used it for that. So.
Very good. What are some advices you have for somebody who's like maybe wants to be more publicly known in the industry? If they're maybe they want to grow into a career of keynote speaking. What are some things they can do early on in their career to kind of start building up in that?
Definitely LinkedIn. If you do nothing else, if you do no other platform, I pretty much, with just about everyone, I'm trying to think if there's any exceptions. There might be some exceptions out there, but if you're going to do nothing else, LinkedIn is, I said, it's sort of a safer place for many people. It's more business oriented. So, and it's also like your online business card, your online PR machine, right? So, yes, obviously it's good to have a website for sure, because website's the only thing that you own yourself, right? Any other platform, you don't own the content. So you have to keep that in mind with anything. So probably a very basic website. And right now you can get a basic website done. You don't have to go spend 10, 20,000. You can, but you don't have to. And then I'd say a website and LinkedIn is the best place to start. And then start. Don't wait until you have the perfect headshot and the perfect everything done. Right now with phones, I've done headshots for people. You can, you know, don't wait until you have to get a professional done. Ideally, for some people, I recommend professional, but uh, I think you and I both know, eh, even doing these shows, you start. And just about anybody that's had great success doing anything, they started first. And then you learn along the way. And, I go back once in a while. Sometimes I see some of my early shows too. And I'm like, ooh, geez.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. What about for those like who like don't know anything about the like speaking space? Like what are like some actionable items they can do to like I don't know, maybe they don't know anything about like they just like have this inclination like, hey, I wanna speak at events or whatever it may be. What are some like entry points?
Well, one thing, if you need more comfort level with speaking, I mean, there is Toastmasters. That's sort of I do recommend that to some people, depending. Some Toastmasters groups are better than others, but that's just if you need to get comfortable, if you're really nervous about public speaking. If you're fairly comfortable there, then the next thing is to, even do, get on some podcasts, get your name out there, get a bit of a platform on, like LinkedIn, and start positioning yourself as an authority or knowledgeable about something. And then you can apply for speaking gigs at various like events. And the more, I mean, if you do have a specialized area, that's often what organizations and events are looking for, someone with specialization. And then decide, are you looking to do more specialty speaking, or you're looking to do more motivational talks, right? And also be prepared to probably speak for no charge to start. And, even speak at local, a Rotary Club, speak at anyone, just get some experience. In cycling, we say, you need time in the seat. And in speaking, you need time in front of the microphone, time on the floor to speak. And then the other thing I'd suggest, you're not doing it for free. So what you do is you send, you charge them and then give a goodwill discount. So there's ways that, you want to put a value on your time and energy. But yeah, that's usually the best way, is to just get out there, and a lot of times through networking. and telling people that, hey, I'm available as a speaker.
Mm. I, I agree. I think that it's extremely important to like build up a platform, like a lot of like what we do and what I do personally for like my like brand and whatnot is it's just to execute, it's to get out there, it's to do things, it's to be on these different platforms. And even if as of right now maybe the messaging is not as tailored as I'd like for it to be, at least there's content being broadcasted to where whatever the raw version of it is with the untailored version, uh, people are gaining, like they're deciding whether they like that individual or like myself, I guess in this instance, but they like that individual, or whether the content that they are talking about is content you're interested in, basically building out that following.
Mhm.
And then over time, like now you have some general base of a following, or people who are interested in your content. And then if you decide to start tailoring or start to actively go after like a speaking engagement, it then becomes easier because potentially
Mhm.
that person may have like seen you. Like definitely I get enough exposure on LinkedIn and whatnot that if I reach out to somebody who's doing speaking engagements, or is in charge of speaking engagements, there's a plausibility they've heard my name, and it's
Right.
just been through like producing content for like years, and uh, just being on that grind continuously.
Yeah, very true. And the more you give a talk, you get feedback. You give a talk, you get feedback, and you're just gonna find out. And you also know, from when I've done speaking, the stories that resonate with people. You know when people
Mm,
light up, uh, when they don't light up,
yeah.
right? And, I mean, the reason I really like someone like Ron Tite is he actually did comedy. And I mean, he's a very funny speaker. He's not a comedian per se, but he started out in comedy, and he tells these stories sometimes about when he first started. And,
Mhm.
you really have to be prepared to just tank when you go out and do comedy, because people, if you've ever seen a comedian, right?
Mm,
You're either going to like it or not. And when they don't like it, people just cringe. And
yeah.
so, that's where he learned a lot about, what he says is, when a story lands. So
Mm,
that's a term used when we talked in speaking, is that, right away when something lands and when it's like cringeworthy.
yeah. Yeah. So if you give a cringy speech, it's not the end. There's still another go.
It is. My son does some comedy, but he's actually very funny. I keep saying you got to do more, but he did do something in like a coffee house through he's at university and that. And I just said to him, I said, remember, like, good for you, get out there and do it, but remember, you're not everybody's going to love everything. So
Mhm.
someone did take a video, and he said he thought he tanked. I listened to it. He actually did a good job, because it was, there were some things that landed, some things that didn't. And but the best way to test out material, and it's really why, it's why I love doing even, interviews like this. So I want to thank you for having me on, because I'm always, by the questions you ask, and I'm learning as well. And it's a constant path and journey. I would say
Mm,
life, if you think you know it all, oh boy, you're in trouble, right? So, I am at a place in my life where I'm continually learning, and I'm not a youngin, but I continue to, um,
it's become
like,
sharper. Yeah.
yeah, and learn more about everything.
Yeah.
Cycling is new to me. Cycling, I just started just before COVID. What I've learned and how I connect cycling to even what I do with my work is fascinating, because last night we were out on this ride, and it was so windy. It was like crazy wind, and it was a smaller group, and I felt the stronger people cycling. And at one point I just thought, I just want to like turn around and go back, right? We were fighting the wind for a long time. Normally you fight the wind, then you turn a corner. No,
Yeah.
we were on the open road. It felt like it was never going to end, but it did. And I survived. So, and
Got through it. Yeah.
good experience. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned previously was the um, kind of like the refining of what you say. I think that one's extremely important because like that's one thing that's really helped me on the sales side of things. So if you look back, probably even four episodes that have released, um, there's a lot of talk on like how I'm not good at sales, right? And that narrative is really starting to change, and is a narrative that I feel like couldn't change, right? But it's because of like the reps of doing it, and then recognizing the stories that I'm telling of like, oh, okay, they really liked when I talked about this thing. Like, maybe it's the customer issued a PO, and there was this. We already went through design approval, and they cut a PO against it, and now they want a change. They don't want to issue any more money for this new change that they want, and it's okay. We'll do it. And like that's one thing that people just like they really like gravitate towards is like just like that line. I think I give it better when I'm in a sales meeting or whatever. But point being is like we're doing this thing that we don't have to do necessarily. We could push back and say, hey, we're not going to do that. But it's just like the level of support that we're giving, and it's just like learning that like, oh, okay, these are the things that they want to hear. Like these type of, I guess maybe a testimonial maybe is a good way of putting it.
Well, people like to hear stories as well, right? So you can throw data at people and stats and graphs, and I see this often done with PowerPoints. And often, when people are giving talks, they just rely on they put the PowerPoint up and then they read from the PowerPoint. Now, this is not finger pointing at anybody that does that because I'd say probably 95% of people do it. So it's very common. But as I said, just because everybody does it doesn't make it right. So I always kind of I try to, anybody that needs help with that, I said, it's much better that you use instead of, 30 slides, be better use really 6 to 10 slides and use images that are memorable, and then you tell the story. Because if you see, a story, a picture of, say, a black cat, right, or in it, and you're talking about could be curiosity. That's what it's going to resonate with people, right? That image, as opposed to graphs that people are going to. It's just, and then what happens is people start to do this. They snooze. I was at a school with a young person, and they had, well, there was someone that just, we'll say, used a PowerPoint, and the kids were like, but it was the same PowerPoint they probably used across the board for every presentation they've done. The young person I had with me is about, he's maybe 19 now, 20. And he spoke to the kids about how at 17 he bought his first car and how he did an apprenticeship. And I tell you, the kids all of a sudden that got their attention. I always recommend to, you know, manufacturers, if you want to get kids' attention, send in those young people that can tell those stories. Because if we want more kids to get into manufacturing and choose that as a career, they need to hear those things. They need to hear that and what it's like, the fun part of it, and because right now most kids think, doctor, lawyer, teacher, whatever, the engineer, those are the main. And not that there's anything wrong with those careers, but there's a whole world out there that for kids that maybe even don't want to go on to post-secondary school.
Yeah, and really like engineering is really like the only promoted job title for manufacturing. It's like the closest related promoted job title probably. And like you said, if you don't want to go into a post secondary, uh, then there's no thought of manufacturing really. I personally didn't even know anything about really manufacturing or automation until I walked into a college and was like, hey, I got to do something. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I got to do something. And then I got directed. They're like, we have this automation thing, and I'm like, what's that? You know?
Yeah, thankfully. And that's the thing, more young people need to see those opportunities available as opposed to only, we have a school system that's run by teachers who come out of a system that encourages, the uh, multi-level approach to getting through high school. Like when I was in high school, they used the terms basic, general, and advanced. If that isn't the worst possible way to categorize kids, so you're advanced. Ooh, you're the smart kids. Basic, like we called kids basic. Just and only because they weren't very good maybe in academics, but they were, you know, and this is a big push right now. A lot of requests. We need to get shops shop things back in schools. And yeah, we need to get rid of these images that because you're not, an A+ student in academics, that you are basic. We need to also celebrate that. I mean, it's not always the people with PhD that are keeping our society running. So
Yeah, and also I feel like I really feel like the like those co high school programs are like some of the best programs because you really might catch somebody who like had zero plans outside of high school, like to do anything college related or career related, right? There's a plausibility that you can catch them through like one of those technical classes through dual credits. You might excite somebody. Oh, well, I already got a couple credits in this. Maybe I'll go ahead and carry it on through into college. So it's like if we can bring more of those like dual credited classes and more of the like other technical or really just any career related like co-work type of programs into the high schools, I think that's tremendously helpful.
well, and, this is a bit of a passion of mine. I think the school system is set up much too narrowly focused
Hmm.
on one way of learning, right? And we have people that learn differently. But I understand the school system has to accommodate kind of the middle of the road almost. So kids who are exceptionally bright in terms of academics sometimes struggle, and then kids who are, struggle with academics, they're left behind, right? And so we really need to make big changes. And I think manufacturers and those in automation, they're going to have to start advocating, for changes in the school system
Hmm.
so that we can get a different, track system set up so that we can get kids going down the road of apprenticeships and into skilled trades and not only looking at academia as being the be all and end all.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like one of my big dreams is to be able to make some substantial impact in like education sector. Really, I really want to just like as many things I can do to like affect um, quality of life in a positive way. Like that's the biggest reason, like why like I started this company. I'm in I have a company in this sector. There's a lot of things I could do to make a lot more money right now, but this is like the long game that has the potential to be a much larger company and do many more powerful things than I could ever do by you know, doing some smaller things, maybe with real estate or just whatever other type of career opportunity I could have took. Um, but this really
Well,
gives the ability. One of the big issues also is like those who are excited about education. A lot of times don't have the funding to back anything up they want to do, so they're always having to go to somebody for funding. They're always having to, and
yeah.
that's an immediate struggle right there, right? Whereas if you have, the financial capability to do things, you can fairly immediately put things in place.
As with anything, and yet on the other hand, I always say the most innovative things sometimes come when people, have limited budget. But I also think there's a lot of people in manufacturing. They're going to have to step up, and they're going to need more employees. So
Mhm.
there's really not going to be an option because it's already too late. Like they're going to need to get in there and make some change. And it's I don't know what's going to happen down the road. I mean, it's not looking too promising in terms of finding enough workers and for a lot of these plants. I know here we have like EV plants, we have different opportunities opening up, and there's not going to be enough staff. But for you, I'd suggest too, you might want to look at, for speaking that get into like a local college or high school.
Mm.
They'd probably be glad to have someone like yourself come in and tell a story. And if you could find, I'd go through the teachers, don't go through the the boards.
Right.
So there's too many rules and bureaucracy, but
Yeah.
teachers often, I that's when I gave that when I went in to speak at a school, and I was asked, but one of the things I said, well, I'm sure they don't want to hear necessarily like I can come in and talk about marketing, but I said, what if I bring in so I brought in this young person from one of my clients, and I knew he had an interesting story, but when he talked about buying his car at 17, that some eyes lit up in the room.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I agree. The college thing's a good one. Like I pretty much have an open invitation to come speak at like the local college here, the one, and especially the one I graduated from. Um, so there's definitely like some good opportunity there. I've also spoke to their entrepreneur program. as well as like their engineering type programs. So
Grab some video clips of that.
yeah, absolutely.
Hmm. That's great. That's great because I do think these kids need to hear more from people like yourself. I mean, that's where they're going to get excited about the industry when they see what you're doing. They see your branding. I mean, there is a cool factor of this about, the robotics and how you can make a career out of it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think we're a little bit more blessed to be in like the sexy side of the sector.
I think though there isn't anything that I can't sexify.
Love it, love it, Gail.
New hashtag sexify. That'll get me in trouble.
Gail, thank you for being with us today. Where can people find you at?
Well, pretty much if you put in Google Gail Now, you'll take me to all of my various platforms. You can find my show on YouTube. And again, if you Google Curious Minds with Gail Now, you'll find my new show, Curious Minds. I also have quite a few interviews on there of my Show Up with Gail Now, where I talk to people who show up in the world of manufacturing. But yeah, and on Twitter, Gail Now. Like I said, Gail Now is she's everywhere.
Gail is in the now.
That Gail's in the now.
Awesome. Any last valuable tips you'd like to share with the community?
I think the main thing is, using you as an example is just start, get out there and, do something, even if it feels uncomfortable. We don't grow when we're comfortable. And most manufacturers, like if you want to grow, the people that are struggling right now is because they probably didn't get outside their comfort zone. So when you're feeling uncomfortable, you're on the right path.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
You're
Guys,
welcome.
everybody else, thank you for viewing us. Thank you for checking out this podcast here with Gail, and hopefully you go check out some of our other cool podcasts with our other awesome guests, and we'll catch you in the next one.